Feel the power.
Oh, I could feel it.
Our moment of triumph approaches. It's
Rock Talk.
Welcome to another edition of Grok Talk Throwback Thursday. This week we take you back to June 1st, 2013. On the June 1st, 2013 program, Susan Olson joined us to talk about the Obama bus, granite state futures and their listening sessions, and enabling legislation. Representative J.R. Hole stops by to talk about education, charter schools, and the New Hampshire budget. And Londonderry Fish and Game Club President Rick Olson joins us to talk about the fireworks row in Londonderry, thin-skinned selectmen, and dealing with state and local agencies. All the original ads and content have been retained, but rearranged to suit our new programming format. Some of the content on this program is shared under the fair use provision of U.S. copyright law, found free in the public domain, or covered under Attribution 3.0. Some of the music on this program is provided by Kevin MacLeod at Incompetech.com. The opinions expressed on this program are those of the speakers and not necessarily those of CNHT, GraniteGrok.com, this station, or anyone else for that matter.
You're listening to American Conservative Nation Radio program, your one-stop network for independent conservative talk. Join forces with us as we battle the establishment political class and cut through the rhetoric like a hot knife through butter. Visit us on the web at acnation.com.
Thanks for listening to Grok Talk, brought to you by GraniteGrok.com and syndicated weekly through AC Nation Radio. We'd like to make you an offer we hope you can't refuse. You have a local group or a nonprofit, we'd like to promote you right here on Grok Talk for free. You can send us your own 30-second audio promo, or if you send us the words, we'll make one for you, and then we'll play it, time permitting, during our podcast. If you'd like to take advantage of this opportunity, just email Steve at GraniteGrok.com.
Rock Talk.
Do you think our country is doing just fine?
Nope.
Do you want the cultural, financial, and political analysis that you just don't get from the mainstream media?
Hell yeah.
Then join David and Brian Terry, the Mayflower Brothers, Thursday nights at 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for an hour. That's David and Brian Terry on the Mayflower Brothers, Thursday nights at 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Only on acnation.com. See you there. Hello, AC Nation listeners. Does this sound familiar to you? Here we go again. Hey, John. This is your boss calling. I know you've already worked 80 hours this week, but we're gonna need you to go ahead and come in on the weekend, too, as well.
What the?
We fired some people, and we still need to get things done at the office. Okay, thanks. I know you're busy. The kids, work, life after work. There's so much to do that there's not enough time to listen in live to your favorite programming right here on AC Nation Radio. Well, I'm here to tell you that's not exactly true. Just hop in your car, plug in your iPod, hit play, and we'll do the rest. That's right, we're on iTunes, so you can listen to AC Nation Radio programming wherever you go, even on your morning commute. You're listening to AC Nation. To find us on iTunes, just search for AC Nation, subscribe to the podcast, upload them to your iPod, and you'll never have another boring commute.
We'd like to welcome you to another edition of Rock Talk, brought to you by GraniteRock.com, New Hampshire's conservative website. We are your feared, extremist, right-wing, hard-charging, gun-toting, opinionated, outspoken, rabble-rousing, letter-writing, radio microphone-stomping conservatives and rational libertarians. So get ready for 2 hours of news and opinion you could only get from GraniteRock.com.
Rock Talk.
We'd like to welcome you back. It is another lovely day. It's interesting. 5 days ago in New Hampshire, we had 3 inches of snow. About 2 hours from here, they got 3 feet in the eastern parts of New York. And yesterday it was 95 degrees, and it's going to be at least 90 again today. Now, it's probably a little cooler where you are, up by the lake and the mountain.
It was 88 degrees last night at my house.
That's pretty warm for the mountain.
It is, considering that a week ago tonight, I actually took video of the snow that was falling at my house.
I remember that you let the dogs out about 11:30, right?
That's correct, and I posted it up on Granite Rock.
There was pictures of snow.
Absolutely.
And now your grass is dying. Oh, you have dandelions, that's right.
I have dandelions.
Welcome to Grok Talk. I'm Steve McDonald. I'm here with Skip Murphy and Susan Olson. We have lots of people coming in and out today, so it'll be an interesting afternoon. We'd like to welcome you to our podcast here at the CNHT studios in beautiful, sunny, hot Concord, New Hampshire. Please take a moment to visit cnht.org, see what they do, make a donation, and by all means, please go to GraniteRock.com and see what we do so that you know what we're going to be talking about.
Yes, sir.
Now, doesn't CNHT have its annual picnic coming up next month?
They do. And,
is it July 6th, I think?
It's usually the first weekend after July 4th, so yes, July 6th, which we will be going to probably after we leave here. Because it starts at 11 or something like that, and it's like up the street that way.
Yeah, it's just up in Hillsborough. It's a great, great event.
Let's
just hope the weather's a bit more moderate, because I remember it was shockingly cold and raining, and we had the whole thing inside. Yeah,
we usually do now, and it's been hot some years that we've been there, even with the air conditioning in the room. It's a pretty big room.
It's a huge room.
And,
it is.
And but, it's a noisy room. And there's a lot of people in that room, and you get a couple hundred people in a room, and it doesn't matter what you do. It's really, really hot, and that's kind of how it is. But it's a great event. Lots of people.
Great food, too.
More candidates when you're in a campaign season, so we won't see so much of that this year. Last year, everybody was there because of a campaign year. This year, not so much, but there'll still be speakers, and just about everybody who's anybody is going to come in and say hi.
Yep, on the CNHT page, it is July 6, 11 to 2 p.m., and the Master of Ceremonies will be Rich Gerard from Gerard at Large, local radio show here in New Hampshire. And I will definitely say it is a very loud room, because this is homecoming for activists. And I do often feel really bad for all of the politicians and the speakers who get up in the corner of the room, stand up and earnestly start to make their pitch, and nobody's paying attention.
Well, there's like 10 or 15 people sitting
in the front.
The front, and then everybody else is eating and talking and doing what they came there to do, which is
eating and talking.
Yeah.
Yes.
And then everybody's got tables out with literature and all kinds of stuff, so it's kind of cool.
Yeah, and we should be set up. Well, it'll take us a little while to set up, because we got to break apart almost everything that's sitting here in front of us right now. So,
we'll have to work out the dynamics of that.
We're going to need more donations for more equipment to have a more.
There you go. In order for us to go to the CNHT picnic, where they're having their annual fundraiser, and that's most of the money that they get to help them do their good deeds throughout the year, we're going to need some donations from you to help us get more equipment to go there and cover it.
Yeah.
Well, I think we ought to get one of those. Was it a hearse that was in Ghostbusters? I mean, how cool was that?
It was an ambulance, yeah.
Was it an ambulance or was it a hearse?
It was an old ambulance.
Oh, that's old school. I want the drone.
You want a drone?
I want the AR Parrot drone that can give me live audio and video feeds. I'll just fly it around the room, and we'll live stream it from Granite Rock.
Yeah, but don't you think we need a really cool vehicle all tricked out and, graphically wrapped and on the road so people know we're coming?
At that point,
be afraid.
At that point, I want the biggest darn RV with automatic cameras and lights that come up from the corners. The flaps come up off the side. There we all are.
Obama's got a really big black bus he's not using. Maybe we could borrow that.
Yeah, but isn't that still in Canada?
Well, that's where he got it from. Maybe did they have to send it back?
I don't know.
Well, he got
maybe.
2 of them.
No, he did. He's got. Oh, of
He got
course.
2 of them.
Got to have a spare, just
I-
in case your bus breaks down.
I would think that, just to spare the miles on Air Force One, that they try using the bus. When you have a 2-car family and you have like 1.5 drivers like I do, the most esteemed wife doesn't like to drive all that much. This time I take this car and the next time I take the other car, kind of average it out. Can't we just put them on the bus every once in a while? It's a whole lot cheaper.
Well, yeah, I think it is, but you hear all of the complaints about whether the guy shows up in Air Force One or a bus. It still shuts down traffic 9 ways from Sunday and disrupts people and makes their lives generally miserable if they're commuting to work somewhere.
Well, it's because if he takes Air Force One, he gets in a motorcade of like 70 cars and convoys his way to wherever it is he's going.
Yeah, you don't think they're going to convoy the bus the same way? Maybe
yeah.
And they have Black Hawks over top of it flying along.
Drones.
Yeah, but at least the bus hasn't broken down like Limo 1 by.
I think the bus broke down too.
Because they put the wrong fuel in it.
They're green.
Yeah, here's our super smart government at work. I picked up the wrong nozzle, if you remember that. I think we did post that. It was the Limo 1 was on the flatbed a while ago.
How do they pick up the wrong nozzle? Have you ever gone to the gas station and accidentally?
No, because they don't fit.
Yeah, so he must have adapted to get the nozzle in the bus or the limo or whatever it was to screw it up. Not bright people. The government. The country is in the best of hands.
Don't put
right?
anything past these people. I mean, really.
They just siphon it off like they do everything else.
It's like a metaphor for the entire administration. We used the wrong nozzle.
That's terrible.
Speaking of which, these 3 scandals they really seem to have legs, at least on the right. And I think the Obama.
Where's the ACLU when you need them?
Well, I think the media. I'm not sure how long it'll last in the media, but I'll certainly say one thing: the Obama administration certainly put a stick into the beehive that's the mainstream media, because all of a sudden, because of going after James Rosen of Fox News, they said, "Oh, by the grace of the God I don't believe in, there goes I." And I say that only because most of the newsrooms are lefty, and most of the left is more secular than religious.
I would never have expected the support that Fox News is getting as a result of this. I mean,
this happened once before already.
It did, and they have actually done a pretty good job. The press pool has been really good about saying, listen, you have to let them in. They're press. They really are, no matter what you think. And, of course, the AP got tagged. So maybe there's this general consensus. They're beginning to realize that, yeah, we're the press, but this is still the government, and they will oppress us if they get the opportunity. I mean,
and if it suits their purposes.
Cheryl Atkinson, anybody on their side who actually does anything they don't like, maybe they might begin, just an inkling. They're not there yet, obviously. They're all Obama all the time. But they have to think somewhere in the back of their pointy little heads that if they make a misstep, if they actually try to report something, they're next.
Oh, yeah. Well, look at that poor TV anchor that asked the hard questions of Obama a little while ago. And when the IRS scandal started to pop up into the news, he said, well, wait a minute. I've been getting kind of hammered by the IRS just for asking hard questions. And when he said that on the TV blog, he was suspended and then they fired him.
Yeah.
How much on their knees is that TV station?
Yeah, in more ways than one.
Yeah. I mean,
yikes.
But you look at that and you go, oh my gosh, because they've been going after Fox News. This is the Chicago socialist way. We've seen in academia when conservative speakers go to colleges that they get shouted down, they get screamed out, and most of the deans and the presidents are just standing there, arms akimbo, across their chest, as these rather uncivil, illiberal students who think that they are God's gift to us all. they wouldn't think God's gift because most of them don't seem to believe
They don't
in
believe.
God.
That's right.
So I'm sorry, my bias is showing here.
Metaphorically speaking,
Yes,
if they had a God,
Yes.
Well, they
it'd
do.
be-
They
It's
do.
themselves.
it's government.
Yeah.
but-
Yes, and they,
Oh, but wait. They're the first ones to protest government, though, so government isn't really their God. It's the idea behind the idea behind the idea of government.
When's the last time college students kind of protested government?
Occupy.
Those were college students.
There were college students there.
Yeah, but not.
That wasn't their movement, but they jumped on it.
I think it was Kent State.
Yeah, I would say this is kind of more of Susan's. And
So
my
you don't think
age.
you don't think the anti-globalist groupies have a bunch of college students in them?
Oh, they may have them mostly because they don't have lives anyways. And when you can subsist on pennies or dollars a day, you're not worried about having to support a family.
Well, after Jerry Garcia died, the globalist movement got a real boost because those people didn't have anything to do.
Yes.
From
We
the
used to
neck
follow
up.
the dead. Now we follow the anti-globalists.
Yes, the black band there, the anarchists who go from place to place. They're mostly young, but then again,
The brick throwers, we like to call them.
yes. But that's the thing that really gets me kind of funny to go off on a tangent. Squirrels. See, I was the first one today to use the word.
We've been on like 5 tangents since we started.
That's all right.
But this is how we progress through the show.
That's
Yes,
right.
That's true.
It's how we roll.
Yes, but I find it rather amusing that very seldom will the Democrat Party forcefully go after the anarchists who show up at what seems to be a lot of the Occupy or socialists. Go back to the Chicago teachers who are outwardly, many of them are social party leaders.
Sure.
And the anarchists just fit right in behind. And how often does the Democrat Party go after the anarchists? Yet we, who seem to believe in the Constitution, believe in the rule of law, believe in traditional values, and also clean up after our protests, we want to kill government. Those evil free staters.
Yes, our anarchists are bad. And they are.
That's right.
But I mean, they're ours, and, we have to live with them.
Yep.
Yeah,
the keen kiddies, in a lot of cases. I do believe that the keen kiddies and the anarchists amongst them do give a bad name to a lot of the hard-working folks who just want limited government, which, as far as the Democrat is concerned, a statist Democrat, there's hardly
There's no
any
such
difference.
thing.
There's no difference between the two because anything less than what they want for government is anathema, and it's either 200% government or zero government. There's nothing in between.
That's right. It's either nihilism, or nothing. There's nothing in between.
There is nothing in between, though. They're almost identically the same thing. I mean, they're run the same way.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Harold Kirsten would have nothing to say if we took away the words Tea Party, Free Staters, and extremist. I mean, he'd be almost out of a vocabulary.
Can he pronounce all those syllables at one time?
Once in a while,
I guess that's 3 syllables.
he calls them vile too. So
Vile. Well, see, that's 1 syllable. That's much easier to remember.
only 4 letters.
It's only 4 letters. I'm sure they got a lot of 4 letters too.
I'm quite sure they've got a lot of 4
Yeah.
letters.
So it's like,
NHDP is 4 letters.
Yeah, maybe
that's right.
maybe I should put up Ray Buckley's YouTube videos again. He says a few number of 4-letter words.
Ooh, yeah.
Yes. Hey, Harold, want to talk vile?
Yeah, listen to this, big boy. Those are disgusting. We ought to run those. I should have them on a tape recorder in my briefcase, and every time I go crossways with some Demo progressive, just pull up Mr. Buckley and say, "I want." Whatever
No,
it is.
don't say that.
I'm not going to say that. I'm not going to say that because I don't say things like that. But that gentleman did and does.
Yes.
And how come that? How come one of our state senators having a typo and calling mistakenly, accidentally, the governor a mean name, how can that have a full-on attack by, what's his name?
Harold.
Harold and those guys.
Yeah.
And Mr. Buckley saying those things and videotaping himself. How come that isn't vile?
Yeah, well...
Haggie's not vile.
No, it's a
It's
mistake.
actually kind of funny, but
Actually, I'm looking at Maggie versus Haggy. It's still the same finger. It's just an inch difference. You know?
Haggy Masson? Is that what?
Haggy. No, but Harold. We ought to invite Harold in. I actually did invite him once because he has said some politically incorrect things as well.
No.
And one time, I actually called the New Hampshire Democrat Party and asked to talk to Harold. I actually got through to him, and I said, Harold, this is Skip Murphy from Granite Rock. Silence. And I said, now you know what it's like to have the shoe on the other foot, because he had previously tried to ream us out, or me out, for saying bad things. And I said, we'd love to have you on Grok Talk. We'll be civil. We actually know the meaning of the word civil.
it's 2 syllables.
Well,
I don't know.
We do have one persona when it comes to Grok Talk. We do have another persona that's when we're writing. I mean, we vary ourselves based on the media. But I would have come in and said, okay, let's put the snark on the side, unless you bring it up. And we'll have a nice conversation about how political correctness hurts both sides of the aisle.
Yeah, and in fact, I'd like to invite Patrick Abrami on.
Oh,
The
yes.
man thinks I'm paranoid, that I'm delusional. He doesn't know me well enough not to like me.
That's an interesting way to put it, Steve.
Yeah, it is, because, there's a lot of people that don't like us who've never even met us.
That's right.
There's a lot of people who don't like us who've never read a word we've written.
That's right.
Does that mean we're like Rush Limbaugh?
Yes.
Yes.
Kinda, in a very tiny, sort of insignificant
Well,
way.
these are
But,
golden
yeah.
microphones.
No, they're black.
Oh.
Oh, trust me.
Black.
Trust me. His single microphone is worth more than all of this equipment put
Black
together.
like my Ruger.
Ooh, and that does look very nice with the outfit you've got on today.
Thank you very much. This goes
Really.
with everything
Doesn't
I own.
actually go
Did you
with
know
the
that?
shoes, though.
It goes with everything I own. Everything.
Good thing the camera's not
Everything
running.
I own.
Maybe that's the next thing I should start
The,
bringing in is the camera.
There you go. Do like a little helmet cam thing. Just kind of.
Oh, I gotta
Wouldn't
get
that
the.
be fun?
I gotta get the look-see. The little camera that attaches.
I've been looking at those. Yeah, that would be fun.
Those would be fun. That's a little camera that makes itself look like a Bluetooth headset for your smartphone. Actually, does act like one, except it also has a little video camera that can either stream to your phone, and then you can pull that video out later, or it can automatically stream to Ustream, so that whatever you're looking at is automatically displayed for the whole internet. So for the next time when the police come to your door, you can say, "Oh, by the way,
hello, let me get my phone here."
Yes, or you go to a New Hampshire listening session.
Oh, I tell you what, we went to one last Tuesday night.
Oh, did you video
in
it?
Antrim. It was. I felt so sorry for those people. Antrim
Squirrels, here we go again.
No. It's absolutely a lovely town hall there in Antrim. I don't know if you've ever been there, but it's, we were meeting on the second floor, and they had it set up for 2 groups, big groups. And, so 3 people from the Monadnock Central Planning Commission, were there. There were 2 people from the Antrim, Planning Board, who actually one had to leave at 7:00 because there was something going on. There was a woman there from Stoddard, and then there were 3 people, myself and 2 others, that were not from Antrim, but who've been following the New Hampshire Listens Granite State Futures thing. And unlike ones that we've attended in the past, where they've got that big, 30-page, syllabus where you go through and they've got all the leading questions, well, there was this darling little girl who led the discussion, who had nothing prepared except a series of questions and points that they wanted to make. And without exception, except there was a person who showed up from one of the major utilities in the state who I was shocked. But this woman was occasionally chiming in with all the buzzwords, smart growth and workforce housing, and the central planning people.
The aider and a better.
She's an aider and a better, and I'm sitting next to her. I'm going, "What are you talking about, honey? I know you want to be liked, but I know you don't believe this." But at the end of the session, the central planning people kept wanting to lead us, to the Kool-Aid. And we kept just drawing them away and talking about private property rights, and we like rural and remote, and, leave it alone. We're fine. Leave us alone. Get out of our pocketbooks and get off our freaking property. And the poor little girl, I think, really was in tears by the time the evening was over. It was not what she had hoped to accomplish, which was another one of their standardized kumbaya sessions with bicycles.
Well, when you have a listening session, you're supposed to listen to them. That's really.
But it doesn't. But it doesn't work that way. I attended one. I filmed it. I certainly commented upon it.
Oh, we've done that too,
and we should do more.
And there are a couple more coming up. But if you look at the reports that they produce from each of these meetings, it's quite interesting. In fact, I have them all on my clipboard here today. But this is really something we probably should emulate if we could. Is these people do not give up. They absolutely do not give up. It's over and over and over and over again, starting from the first water bill in 2005 up through my delusional problems with Senate Bill 11. These people don't give up. You gotta almost grudgingly admire this blinkered approach to life that doesn't look left or right but straight ahead. And it is futile to resist. You will be assimilated.
Well, as Skip pointed out, and I used your line from the blog post about SB 11 with regard to the thing Mr. Abrami said on one of the Facebook group pages, and I just wrote, it's enabling legislation. Be patient. It'll come back to bite you.
Absolutely.
And that's the problem.
It is.
It's what you said. It's enabling legislation. It creates an environment fertile, regardless of your original intent, for things that are dangerous to freedom and liberty and property rights and all that good stuff.
Oh, without question.
And the biggest problem I see is that this is yet another... we seem to be getting into that tradition where lawmakers believe that they have done their jobs when they have sketched out the grand design at the 50,000-foot level and no longer worry about what's going to happen when somebody with a gleam in their eye starts writing stuff at ground zero. And this is the
you
problem
mean at the Joint Legislative Committee on Administrative Rules?
Oh, I don't know whether it'll be there or not, but
it is,
somewhere,
trust me.
sometime, somebody. Well, even if the state level doesn't do anything, this enabling legislation now allows one or more towns to set up a regional board, which can then make their own rules,
which they could have done before. The thing
that worries about me the most is that they will also have their own taxing authority, and nobody on that board has any accountability, any direct accountability to the voters. And that's where Abrami is absolutely freaking wrong about this.
Well, he's also wrong because he said that, all of these antiquated laws and this myriad of statutes here and there, oh my goodness gracious, let's just short circuit the process that was established to give voters a say at each step along the way. No. Let's just, forget that. It'll take too much time to repeal them. It'll take too much time for a municipality as backward as Exeter and Stratham to figure it out. Let's just cut to the chase and give them, don't pass go. Don't worry about it. Don't collect $200 from private well owners.
Now, remind me, he's a Republican or a Democrat?
He's a Republican.
It's unclear.
He's registered as a Republican. He was elected as a Republican.
Which means
he calls himself a conservative Republican.
And if you look at his voting record, he's got what, like a C+?
He's
got a 70-something?
He's actually, if you look at all of them, he's somewhere, he's close to the 80% in the 80s, between, 78, 85. He's really not an unreliable vote as far as the platform goes, because the HRA rates him pretty well. He's in the low 80s. But, this is one of those hot button issues. Right to work is a hot button issue. Abortion is life, a hot button issue. There are certain things we really need as a conservative, if you have your core values, that you can't possibly. I mean, how can you support unions as a Republican
You can't.
And not acknowledge the fact that when you support a union, you support everything Democrats support. I just don't give anybody any
and you
quarter on that.
support their funding mechanism, which is the union.
Enabling legislation like this is another one.
Yes, it is.
Well, and my whole core disagreement with this is that it takes it above and out of the realm of ordinary citizens to put up a stink when things go bad. And that is not the New Hampshire way. That is not how a representative republic or even a democracy works, because we are the ones who are supposed to be in control. And when even a Republican advocates and pushes for something like this, that takes away the ability of the citizens to control their own destiny, to basically short circuit, as you said, short circuit self-government, in that we are electing people to govern for us. That's a progressive Republican. And we have said over and over again, it is not just Democrats who are progressives, but there are Republicans as well. And they are as much a threat to the Constitution as any Democrat who advocates for the same. And he's going to go on, if he listens to this, he's going to rant and rave that I don't know what I'm talking about, whatever. And I just ask, how do you hold those boards directly accountable? And the answer can only be, once they are established, is you can't.
Of course you
because,
can't.
well, you can vote out the selectmen and replace them with others, and, well, no, the people they appoint will have fixed year terms. And voters don't change those terms. The voters don't fill those slots. And even if you go up, basically if you go up to one of their hearings, all of those folks sitting on that board, if you get rabid enviro wackos on
Which is
there,
what you're going to get.
which is what you're going to get, because they're the ones who are concerned
Those are people
with
who
that.
are going to go and get those jobs, those positions.
Of course they are.
Yeah, because I've got one on my town's conservation committee. He wants to lock every single parcel of land up so that you can no longer do development, and he spends But those folks, when those citizens come up, they're just going to give them the big middle finger.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And
they'll say the nice words, but effectively they're going to do nothing.
of course, and it was the same. You're talking about conservation commissions. I frankly don't remember what happened to 102, Senate Bill 102, but it was set up by the Senate to enable municipalities to elect or appoint members of the Conservation Committee. But once it got to the House decided that voters weren't smart enough to pick qualified people to serve on those conservation committees, so they would be appointed by select boards that needed no qualifications. So it's just, it's enabling for me, but not for thee kind of thing.
All that good stuff and more. J.R. Holes here. We're going to come back in a couple minutes, and we're going to talk about some more really cool stuff right here on Rock Talk.
And, folks, we are Grok Talk, a production of New Hampshire's leading blog site, GraniteGrok.com, where we rush to the aid of conservatives everywhere. Trying to get equipment ready. We're still playing with all of our new equipment that's coming in. I am Skip Murphy. We have Steve McDonald.
And
here.
all the mics are up.
All the mics are up. Yay. We have Groksters, Steve McDonald. Oh, gosh. The names are always the hardest. Susan Olson, Mike Rogers, and our guest, J.R. Hole. Good morning to you all.
Good morning, all.
Good morning.
Yes, dates and names are something that I've never been able to acquire a good handle on. So it's mostly, hey, you. So, hey, you, how are you doing today?
Don't feel bad. It takes me about 5 attempts to get the face and name associated properly.
That works. Good morning, Skip. How are you?
I'm doing well. So, what has gotten you to come to our lovely studio here this morning on a night, what is going to be a very hot Saturday?
So, when the New Hampshire House passed the budget, they slaughtered the funding for charter schools. Tangled them up in all sorts of ropes, prohibited them from making new ones, and then added things like the New Hampshire Scholarship Program, which was essentially a quote-unquote charter school funding type option for students after grade 12 to go to colleges.
I just wanted to point out the words that I liked so much that you sent me when we were talking about the topic was economic bondage. I love that.
Well,
The visual.
Yes.
So the issue about education, and I've traveled throughout the world and I was over in China this past summer, and the difference between the person on the factory floor using a broken hacksaw blade to scrape die casting flash away and the person in the air-conditioned office was education. And the difference between the person in the air-conditioned office doing paperwork and the guy who owned the Mercedes who owned the shop was the ability to speak English. At the end of the day, it comes down to education. So what is our state doing right now? Our state is, in fact, not giving good education options to parents, effectively locking their children in economic bondage for their lives.
Wow.
Well, it really does come down to, there's a joke running around the word bondage in my head associated with the two words Democrat Party, but I don't think I should say such. But really,
didn't you already just do that?
Are they pronouns? Are they? I don't know. We were having a discussion earlier.
Yeah. Well, and it really comes down to, and we at Granite Rock certainly agree with you, JR. We are all about individual freedom and liberty, and we do see the state as the formal philosophical of the state, not wishing to break out of the Industrial Revolution model of education when we're seeing all kinds of different techniques and technologies that could actually explode that. We're starting to see that up at the upper levels of higher education, where universities are starting to see the traditional lecturer to large group of skulls full of mush is no longer economically viable, and now they're all moving to basically massively online classes. Some of them for just you audit, you take them, and that's it. Some of them you pay a little bit of money, you get to audit or a certificate of auditing, and now they're starting to push into the model of, you can get a degree doing this now. And I'm not just talking about Phoenix Online, the for-profit type folks, and that's being emulated everywhere else, but
There's
JR,
here,
MIT
Online, is there not, if I recall? MIT last year, 2 years?
Well, a lot of the big guys, quote-unquote, are doing that now. So what is it about the state of New Hampshire that is preventing that economic liberty, that the educational liberty from sprouting forth?
Well, I have 3 words on that. NEA. Those aren't words; those are letters. NAFT. Sorry.
At the end of the day, right? It's the unwillingness to change from the current paradigm of the teacher in the classroom. The unions like their complete control of the education system. And whereas the private sector is coming up with better options, they're coming up with an MIT undergraduate degree, okay, not a degree, but you can get all the courses available on the MIT undergraduate program online. And if you do successfully well there, the application process probably for a master's at that school or another is there. Education's valuable.
I think that's great. I don't totally discount the teacher in the classroom point of view. I think the problem is the methods. I've been reading a little on John Dewey. I mean, essentially, we've dumbed down our education system to the production of serfs for that bondage. And I think the other word Skip was looking for were Democrat plantation, which black commentators like Star Parker aren't afraid to use. So we shouldn't be either.
So at the end of the day, unless we're willing to make changes to our education system in New Hampshire, start to undo the constraints that the unions have placed on the schools, on the school boards, through various union contracts, through various policies, we're not going to have a chance for new policies.
So how do we get there from here? We had the opportunity to pass right to work last year, probably the best chance we've ever had, and I see that as being critical to really breaking that union monopoly.
Well, I concur.
A very interesting thing that I knew absolutely nothing about, which is shocking, first of all, but I hang out with a bunch of smart girls from time to time, and one of them was saying, well, you have to understand that if you're a teacher in a government school, the biggest reason to join the union is because they offer liability insurance that's affordable. It's like $15 a month to get $1 million to $2 million umbrella policy to protect you from lawsuits. Now, first of all, you got to ask yourself, how in the world would the union allow individual teachers to be sued? First of all, well, of course it would, because they're selling the insurance. But if there were a way to now think about it,
AARP.
That's right. But if there were a way, for example, the state of New Hampshire, to have an insurance pool that would allow teachers to self-insure outside of the union, wouldn't that be an interesting proposal? Could we do legislation, JR, to set up a self-insurance pool for teachers?
And why wouldn't the schools, especially private schools, do what small businesses do, which is to self-insure with a policy for things that get too expensive?
There's no reason we couldn't prohibit that from happening. The other way is to allow for a teacher immunity type bill to go through, and then
Even better.
There's no reason for that protection racket type insurance.
Well,
racket.
Well, wouldn't it depend on the type of liability? It's one thing if a student or their families don't agree with what's being taught, versus a complete liability for, as we see in the papers, on the mainstream media all the time, we see teachers using, let's see if I can put this in terms of the left, using their position of power to sexually oppress the students in their classrooms, be they male, female teachers, be they male, female students.
Right.
That's the kind of liability you don't want to give them.
Right. The immunity that you don't want to give them.
Right.
Well, that's criminal. Sorry.
Yes.
There's a difference between immunity and insurance against lawsuits.
Yeah.
I'm going to give Skip a little bucket full of Nerf balls so he can throw them at people.
So there was a bill in...
Including me.
There was a bill in 2 years ago that talked about giving teachers the ability to break up a fight. Right now, there's prohibitions on what teachers can do in terms of touching students. And the rules seem pretty good. But the problem is they can't interact with a student who's in the midst of a fight without losing their job. And the teachers wanted this. Others wanted this. The parents wanted this. Who didn't want it was the unions.
Well, yeah,
Right?
there we come with the top down. It really comes down to who is in control, who has the power to make the decisions.
Right.
And you don't want them to be sensible and close to the student. That's too much. I mean, just look at the overreaction over the Pop-Tarts, the guns, the plastic guns, the cap guns, 5-year-olds being interrogated within an inch of their life and so on. It all comes down to the fact that they simply want the ability to oppress the students. They'd rather banish a student than deal with the problem locally and successfully.
They want to go further than that. They want to indoctrinate them to not see the Constitution for what it's worth. They, in fact, there's been great news articles about teachers asking students to give up their Fourth Amendment rights and other rights, and then writing papers on it.
And I'm still in a big fight with Peggy Gilmore about her concerns over private tax-exempt organizations having control over education in her opposition to school choice and the education tax credit program that was passed in the last legislature. What does she think? What do people think that the NEA and the AFT are if they are not private, tax-exempt, private corporate monopolies?
Yeah.
And what about her own charity?
Well, here's the other thing, too. The news just came out this last week that there were 3 counties, and gosh, I'm going to have to post it. But basically, they sent home letters to the parents, but never bothered to do it in time, so that the kids all got iris scans, biometrics, all being taken by a private company, not associated with the school, and then the school got in big trouble over that. We see that with Common Core, that this data is going to be brought into the U.S. government, and then that can be sold out again to private companies once again. We hear all about this privacy stuff, where we know that now the IRS is going to have to be able to take all of our health care information so that it can properly identify us. Are you Are you properly buying the right amount of health insurance? And it's going to share what used to be all private information among just a number of different departments within the government. Given the current scandals, is this a great idea? But they can also sell that stuff to private companies. The only thing that's going to happen is that I still can't ask my doctor, well, what about my wife's tests? You know, basically, the government and everybody else is going to know all of her information except for me. Now, how much sense does that make? But anyways, we kind of move away. I mean, this Common Core stuff, again, we see, you know, JR, you're talking about the local level type stuff, but now you've got the Gates Foundation, who's put together, quote-unquote, national standards. And I understand we want our kids to be measured against the highest standards we can, but now the Obama government has taken that and is feeding the states their own money in a coercive way to make them say, you will do this. And now we see the New Hampshire State Board of Education trying to ram this down the throats of the local school boards. Whatever happened to the local control?
We've been fighting for local control for a long time, and unfortunately, we have a top-down education process because of the taxpayer dollars that are coming in from D.C. The best thing we could do is to effectively eliminate the federal Board of Education.
But even here in New Hampshire, we have the State Board of Education now going from being a very small group to now telling the local school boards, this is what you will do. And immediately Article 28 comes up. You will pass no unfunded mandates. Well, here we go back again to what we discussed in the first half hour. We have these unelected, unaccountable boards telling everybody else, this is what you're going to do, and there's no voter accessibility. Right. So what can you do? What could the legislature do? You know, you're an engineer.
Right.
I've just handed you a problem. Solve it.
One way to do this would be to prevent Common Core from being adopted by local municipalities without a vote of the current members in that town.
And why not simply reject all federal dollars and mandates out of hand? Several estimates have said that the mandates cost more than the dollars anyway.
We tried that last year. Some of us, for No Child Left Behind, asked to withdraw ourselves from that. And there was the Board of Ed and the Department of Revenue Administration came back with estimates it was going to cost something like $70 million. But what they didn't say was the other side. How much does it actually cost in terms of the money spent on keeping No Child Left Behind running?
Grokster Rick, welcome to the show. Thanks for you coming in. What do you got to say on this?
What do I have to say on this?
Yeah.
My child goes to a private school, praise the Lord.
And yes, he speaks of Liberty House Academy.
Liberty Harbor Academy.
I always say it wrong. My apologies. And we had the dean in, and we've had her in twice now.
Dr. Julianne Cooper.
Right.
Yeah.
And, you know, JR, here's the case of, we often hear about the voucher program. We had Kate Baker in a couple of weeks ago. Last week. I'm horrible. The dates and names, guys.
The Education Tax Credit Program.
Right. And here's a case where the Democrats rail against that because, it's only going to go to a religious school. Here's a perfect example of a non-religious school, and yet they give the charter school like Liberty Harbor as hard of a time as they do like Laconia Christian Academy or some place like that. So what do we do?
Well, and if
instead of saying the legislative branch, what about us as citizens? Because after all, it is our government, supposedly.
Us as citizens showed up in force at the Manchester School Board meeting last week, right? There was 50 or so people complaining about the adoption of Common Core, and then they took it off the agenda.
Yay. Before or after you spoke?
No, before. Apparently it was taken off the agenda sometime the day before.
Right. You understand how that works in
the now, does that
city
mean
of Manch Vegas, right?
Yeah.
You understand how that works?
Sorry. Go on. Does that mean that they've taken the idea away, or simply they'll no longer discuss it in public, but they'll do it anyway?
It's probably the latter.
Actually, the way Manch Vegas works is when they take something off the agenda, they will wait till it's quiet enough and the coast is clear and bring it up again.
That does seem to be the way where people who want something done, it goes back to what Susan said in the earlier hour, and Steve, they just keep doing it over and over and over again. It is the irresistible force, and we have to be able to say, like Buckley did at National Review, standing athwart the gunnels of history and saying no further.
So, yeah, I think, well, that's it, and that's why we always tend to lose these arguments, because they're very patient. I mean, considering how they behave emotionally and react emotionally and legislate emotionally, at the top, they're very patient.
Yes. We've had 100 years of creeping socialism, and that's it. That's just it. They keep trying their ideas over and over until they get them through, but anything we put forward, they try to repeal as soon as they can, and they don't expect us to try again.
The other thing is they make their arguments based on emotion, back to Steve's point, versus logic, but emotion is the way they can sell it. And we on the conservative right need to figure out how to make the same arguments that are based on logical principles and share them at a level that's emotional, because too many people can't get to the logical side.
Well, how do we, who are logic-driven, and now I have 3 engineers at the table here, JR and Mike and myself.
I can feel it.
I know my croissants are wilting.
Yeah, donuts are over on the table, by the way.
Oh, wonderful. You knew I was coming.
Yes. Logic, emotion, and food. But anyways, how do we, who are so logically oriented, who, we try to do these building blocks, especially as engineers, how do we make that switch from being from Mr. Spock to Mr. Emo?
It's about how you script the debate at the end, right? Let's go to firearms in schools. Senator Ayotte was posed a question by the daughter of one of the principals that was killed. It's a tough question to answer, but at the end of the day, she could say, I agree with you. What happened to your mom was horrible, but the government is to blame. They passed the bill that prohibited teachers and administrators from protecting themselves and protecting the children. We have a moral obligation as education or members of the education committee to protect the students.
No, I think that says it all. I believe that teachers should be armed, and I think at colleges, the students that have gone to the appropriate lengths, getting the permit, should also be permitted to be armed.
I mean, I look at it as when you say a gun-free zone, okay, that and the police are minutes away. Right. Nothing bad against the police. And I hear the NEA saying guns should never be in school. Well, that would have been a nice case. It's sort of like President Obama saying the war on terror is over. That's one side saying, "Oh, we're done," and the other side is going, "Yes."
But at the end of the day, it's about not talking about whether gun-free school zones work or don't work. We all know on the logical side they don't work. The problem is, how do we make it that an emotional argument can be made to those who don't even think about whether it's logical or not logical? I agree with you, right back to Senator Ayotte, talking to this daughter. I agree with you. The loss of your mom was horrible. Let's figure out what is necessary to protect or to prevent that in the future. And the way to prevent that is to go back and repeal the prohibitions that are in place, because that is responsible for killing your mom.
I think we try to make some different arguments. I know my first response to the left bringing up that poor girl from Connecticut was to say, did you bring her up here to make a circus show? And let me ask you a question. Why are you asking somebody from a different state to come tell our state senator that we should pass laws that didn't work there here? You try to make that case. We don't have a high homicide rate. We don't have, we are one of the safest states in the nation year after year after year. We have concealed carry, open carry. We have pretty loose gun laws overall. We have background checks at gun shows, which we talked about a couple weeks ago. And, those are the things you bring up. We have these things in place. Why do we want their failed laws in our state, and why would we do it from the federal government?
Right. So the FBI data backs up what you just said. New Hampshire and Vermont, being the 2 states with the least restrictive firearms laws in New England, also happen to have the lowest homicide rates overall, whereas Connecticut and Mass, the states with the highest and the most restrictive gun laws, have the highest, and the percentage is almost 3 to 4 times as higher in those states as it is in Vermont and New Hampshire.
Yeah,
I think in terms of the... Sorry, go on, Rick. Sorry.
I wrote a blog this week about that very instance, I talked about some of the flaws in the gun debate arguments, and one of the things I pointed out is we now have a track record, a history since Newtown, over 6 months. All the arguments are out there, and yet despite the arguments, they're still taking the data and they're twisting it. Reliable sources like FBI.gov. CDC is only partially reliable because the fact of the matter is CDC data is tainted by the fact that it has a decidedly anti-gun position. But when you combine the two sets of data, a very clear picture emerges. And Kevin Williamson from National Review Online wrote a fantastic article about that, the use of the very data and what the arguments are being made.
Right, and the point about the CDC is that they're trying to prove, the case for guns equals gun accidents. They don't record, because it's not in their interest, the gun self-defense issues. But the other thing I was going to say about the schools and the emotion is, the next time the crazed killer comes in, wouldn't you rather your mum took him out before he mowed down her and a bunch of kids?
Absolutely, and that's the point of framing the argument at an emotional level. It's how do you touch to the person who's been hurt by government policy, and you need to reach down and agree with them that they've been hurt, but lay the blame where it belongs, which is at the feet of poorly enacted government policy.
I mean,
Okay.
I think you hit really on the head on the nail here, because too often the Democrats and the statists and the progressive answer to that is government has to do more. They are constitutionally shaped, using that as an adjective, not as a description of our esteemed paper, to knee-jerk that individuals cannot defend themselves. In fact, that is part and parcel of their whole creed, that you cannot do anything for yourself. So emotionally, I understand the emotional stuff, but then they have this overbearing thing that they say, well, we're not ideologically driven, we're pragmatic. Let the police take care of you. And I know you're part of the natural rights group in the state, so this ought to be a huge on-ramp for you.
So the issue is the police aren't there. It's really hard to carry one on the back on your shoulders all day long. At the end of the day, we have an obligation as parents to protect our children. I have an obligation to protect my wife. I mean, this is a moral obligation to protect those around you. And it's really tough to carry a 250-pound cop on my shoulders. So the way to do this...
The holsters are really expensive, too.
Yeah, well, actually, the cops that don't eat donuts are lighter.
Okay!
and I guess at a prior job, I did design work for law enforcement. I understand what goes into designing a holster for a law enforcement officer, how much time and effort it is put into restraining a firearm in a holster, and how much time they spend practicing to draw it. But at the end of the day, you can't have a cop with you every time you need one. And on top of that, there's good cops and bad cops. And unfortunately, there's a couple of % of the bad cops that spoil it for everybody. But in the meantime, you can carry some sort of both lethal and or non-lethal item on you, a tool to protect yourself and those around you. I would encourage every teacher to carry mace. Absolutely every teacher in every classroom should have mace on them. That's an easy first step to protecting our students.
Okay, we've kind of gone a little bit, just like we always do, the ADD bloggers of Granite Rock have gone slightly off topic here. So we've got like a minute and a half left, JR, and we do appreciate you coming in. Let's bring it back to educational freedom. Right. How do we push for more of that? How do we get around this institutional John Dewey, as Rick put it, the teacher and full of classroom? How do we adapt it so that kids are learning the best way that is best for them, not so much for the government to get it across?
So it comes down to who's most interested in that child succeeding, right? And it's typically the parents of that child. They have the most invested in that child. It's not going to be the teachers. It's clearly not going to be the administrators. They have very little skin in the game. So the way to do it is to empower the parents in this case and the students to make decisions about the best way to educate their children. All options should be on the table. Online curriculums, homeschool, charter schools, private and parochial schools should all be available, not education doesn't work as a one-size-fits-all. Every student learns differently.
Okay, and how do they get a hold of you if people listening to the podcast want to do more here in the state of New Hampshire?
My email is jr@jrhole.com.
Very good. Anybody else?
Yeah, Mama mentioned something very interesting that came in from Europe, where colleges are proposing to alternate time in classroom with time in industry. That's an interesting thought, but I wonder whether it'll improve education or simply give them an excuse to collect more money.
Apprenticeship. We'll have to do that in another topic.
Yeah.
All right, I'm turning everybody else's mic off. This is Grok Talk. I'm Steve. I am here with Skip and Mike and Rick and Marmar's here and JR and Susan, and it's not that hot. Hey, we got a fan. We're doing all right. We will be right back with Rick Olson and some discussion about fireworks.
Oh, feel the power.
Oh, I could feel it.
Our moment of triumph approaches. It's
Grok Talk.
Welcome to another edition of Grok Talk Throwback Thursday. This week we take you back to June 1st, 2013. On the June 1st, 2013 program, Susan Olson joined us to talk about the Obama bus, granted state futures and their listening sessions, and enabling legislation. Representative J.R. Hole stops by to talk about education, charter schools, and the New Hampshire budget. And Londonderry Fish and Game Club President Rick Olson joins us to talk about the fireworks row in Londonderry, thin-skinned selectmen, and dealing with state and local agencies. All the original ads and content have been retained, but rearranged to suit our new programming format. Some of the content on this program is shared under the fair use provision of U.S. copyright law, found free in the public domain, or covered under Attribution 3.0. Some of the music on this program is provided by Kevin MacLeod at Incompetech.com. The opinions expressed on this program are those of the speakers and not necessarily those of CNHT, GraniteGrok.com, this station, or anyone else for that matter.
You're listening to American Conservative Nation Radio Program, your one-stop network for independent conservative talk. Join forces with us as we battle the establishment political class and cut through the rhetoric like a hot knife through butter. Visit us on the web at acnation.com.
Thanks for listening to Grok Talk, brought to you by GraniteGrok.com and syndicated weekly through AC Nation Radio. We'd like to make you an offer we hope you can't refuse. You have a local group or a nonprofit, we'd like to promote you right here on Grok Talk for free. You can send us your own 30-second audio promo, or if you send us the words, we'll make one for you, and then we'll play it, time permitting, during our podcast. If you'd like to take advantage of this opportunity, just email Steve at GraniteGrok.com.
Grok Talk.
Do you think our country is doing just fine?
Nope.
Do you want the cultural, financial, and political analysis that you just don't get from the mainstream media?
Hell yeah.
Then join David and Brian Terry, the Mayflower Brothers, Thursday nights at 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for an hour. That's David and Brian Terry on the Mayflower Brothers, Thursday nights at 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Only on acnation.com. See you there. Hello, AC Nation listeners. Does this sound familiar to you? Here we go again. Hey, John. This is your boss calling. I know you've already worked 80 hours this week, but we're gonna need you to go ahead and come in on the weekend, too, as well.
What the?
We fired some people, and we still need to get things done at the office. Okay, thanks. I know you're busy. The kids, work, life after work. There's so much to do that there's not enough time to listen in live to your favorite programming right here on AC Nation Radio. Well, I'm here to tell you that's not exactly true. Just hop in your car, plug in your iPod, hit play, and we'll do the rest. That's right, we're on iTunes, so you can listen to AC Nation radio programming wherever you go, even on your morning commute. You're listening to AC Nation. To find us on iTunes, just search for AC Nation, subscribe to the podcast, upload them to your iPod, and you'll never have another boring commute.
Rock Talk.
We'd like to welcome you to another edition of Rock Talk, brought to you by GraniteRock.com, New Hampshire's conservative website. We are your feared, extremist, right-wing, hard-charging, gun-toting, opinionated, outspoken, rabble-rousing, letter-writing, radio microphone-stomping conservatives and rational libertarians. So get ready for another 30 minutes of news and opinion you could only get from GraniteRock.com.
Rock Talk.
All right, we're back. Welcome back to Grok Talk, production of GraniteRock.com. Just like the little promo says, we have moved on to our next segment, where our actual guest is an actual Grokster who is a guest, not just here as another Grokster. Rick Olson has joined Skip and Mike and myself, and we are going to start talking about, I wanted to address this situation because the things that have been going on in Londonderry with the fireworks, we talked about the fireworks.
We did.
We talked about how great it was, how much fun it was, how everything happened, and then we even talked about the craziness that the bureaucrats started to engage in after the fact, and your inability to get any local newspaper to really publish what your side of the story is, and I wanted to take some time to get that on audio so that we could then work from that and move forward.
Sure. Well, on April the 27th, the New Hampshire Pyrotechnics Association hosted their annual meeting at our facility. Basically, back in January, they came to us and they said, look, we have an annual meeting and we're looking for a place in the southern part of the state where we can host our annual meeting and have our shooters show up, and we can showcase a series of new fireworks that we're looking to purchase. And these are the shooters that shoot for, your old home days, and, it's all your commercial shooters in New Hampshire that shoot fireworks. And they said, we were hoping maybe we could use your facility. And, we got together with the guys and we thought about it. And we said, well, there's no conflict here. I don't see why. We have the space. We have the land. It's a good, safe area. It's away from houses. Sure, why not, So we hosted the NHPA. And
tell us about the bureaucratic process prior to the event.
That's where I was leading right into. Yeah. So all the permitting had to be done by NHPA because we're not licensed pyrotechnics people. They're all licensed folks. New Hampshire State Fire Marshal's Office requires to shoot certain types of fireworks. You got to be licensed through them. So you got these licensed guys. They go to the State Fire Marshal's Office and they say, we want to shoot a fireworks show. This is our site. This is our plan. And the fire marshal comes down. And also bear in mind, the Londonderry Town Fire Department, their fire marshal, Brian Johnson, is also involved in this permitting process. So there's actually two permitting processes. The first process is the fire marshal's office. They do a site inspection. And then the second one is the town fire marshal. They have a permit that they issue, and there has to be fire trucks on site and fire personnel on site because with these particular fireworks, the container on the truck is called a magazine. Before they can even open the magazine, there has to be fire department personnel on site. So, long story short, this was an event that was well known in advance by the town. It was an event that was approved by the town. In other words, the fire department signed off on it. The state fire marshal's office signed on it. We did our due diligence. We did a mailing, albeit it wasn't a big mailing, and perhaps we could have done a larger mailing, but the fact remains, we mailed a lot of folks, okay? And we notified the Londonderry Police Department, And I think in one of those letters, in Litchfield PD and Litchfield Fire Department, I think one of the things we stated in our letter is perhaps you'd want to nixle this event. And
Nixle?
Nixle. You've never heard of Nixle?
No.
Well, you can go to nixle.com and you can put your cell phone number in or your email in, and if the town has, town municipality has some notice they want to blast out to you, they can do that, and you get a little text that says, like in Manchester, for example, when they're going to have a big 5K marathon, I get a little text that says our road traffic on Elm Street and Merrimack Street are going to be closed for 3 hours on this date because of the marathon. Or, be on the lookout, subject wanted, armed and dangerous, just a whole plethora of different things. It's a good notification system. And the neat thing about it is you can opt in, you can opt out, So that suggestion was made. They chose not to do that, okay? We did a mailing. Mailings cost a lot of money, but we did the capacity of what we could do. We mailed a lot of homes. So it's not like nobody knew. So we had this fireworks display, and the fire department told the press, there was 300 to 400 calls coming in, tying up the lines. But the question is, I don't know how true that is because there's nothing documented that states that many calls came in.
Well, can't you go and get the recordings? Because all of that stuff coming into a call center, by law, has to be recorded. Can't you ask for the tapes, sort of like in 911 tape?
We could do that, but I mean, the point is, they have the tapes. I'm sure if somebody took the time and sat down and counted how many different calls there were and broke out what the context or the nature of the calls were, we'd see an entirely different picture than what was actually painted.
Rick's going to get there in a second, but just for those of you who are listening who aren't familiar, the problem was they had this super awesome show, and a bunch of people bitched about it. Not 300 or 400, but some people complained, and now the town of Londonderry is having legislative sessions to discuss what to do about fireworks in the town, who can fire them, the process, and the Londonderry Fish and Game Club is pretty much being smeared in the process.
Yeah.
And I was there, full disclosure.
Yep.
I did get an invite. I was there for the entire time, the first hour. Single shots going up as they're demonstrating, as Rick said, these folks are trying to show their membership. Here's the different kinds of new shells that are coming onto the market. And then the second hour, it's like, if you go to any kind of regular fireworks show, it's always concentrated at the end for the finale. Well, this is like 10 of those finales just wrapped into one. It was glorious.
Yeah.
But you know something? It was the acting fire chief. Because as he walked by, and he said with a large grin on his face, he says, I'm looking forward to this.
Yep.
And I kind of went, yeah, me too. And he knew exactly what I meant, and it was very obvious. He thought this was going to be a great deal.
Yeah, he was walking down back towards the clubhouse because he needed to have a cigarette. So.
Yeah, I think, and as we proceed through this, understand that there's been a lot of media about this now, and the problem, as I see it, is that they're saying what the situation is, and Rick is not being given a fair shake as far as being able to talk about what they did, like we're talking about now, and to respond in the same press to those accusations.
Well, I just, I kind of accept that as being, we're a fish and game club, we're people with guns. So we're not going to be given a fair shake right out of the gate anyway.
Yeah. Are you writing letters to the editor, and are they being accepted and printed?
We're in kind of a wait and see type of situation. What we're trying to do is we're trying to get the dust to settle on this thing, because we got other projects in the making that we're focusing on right now, really big projects as a club. And we've spent our time, effort, and energy. We have other members of our club, other surrogates within our club that are addressing these through letters to the editor and that sort of thing, but they're not getting published. That's the bottom line.
So they basically, the powers that be have put a politically correct media clampdown on the
Londonderry
Fish and Game.
Yeah.
Sorry about that. I'm from the Laconia area.
You take the patch, for example. The patch, the Londonderry patch, the whole thing, that, we've just something as simple as posting an event. You know how you can go in and you can post a community event. Just wanted to go in and post the kids' fishing derby. Couldn't do it. Couldn't do it. They wouldn't help me out, you know. So, I mean, obviously, it's clear to me. I tried in both Internet Explorer and Firefox, and they're blocking us. So, I don't want to, at the risk of sounding conspiratorial, I mean, it's, these are small town communities. I'll give you another example that I came across yesterday. We have a project we're working on at the club. It's going to be going to the planning board for minor. The key word here is minor site plan review, because at the end of the day, it's just excavation. When the engineer was doing some research for the abutting neighborhood in the Litchfield side, one of the town fathers decided to stick his beak in and unsolicitously say to our engineer, "Oh, this is going to have regional impact, so we're going to have to be included in the review process." Well,
regional impact?
Right, yeah. So,
yeah.
So anyways,
regional planning board, did anybody say?
So anyways, I said to the engineer, I says, Pete, this is just another example of these small towns trying to get their nose under the tent, and some of the guys are on the board are in kind of a tizzy. Oh no, what are we going to do? I says, we're going to present our project. We're going to get it approved, and we're going to build what we're going to build, because the fact of the matter is we have a right to do this. Okay, so our relationship with the town, we have no warm fuzzies with them. So what? We're going to submit this project, and they're going to approve it. And if they deny it, they're going to have stated specific criteria as to why, or we're going to sue.
Do you even have to present it to Litchfield?
Yes, we do, because we have wetlands issues. So
my question is, where is the regional part of this? Beyond Litchfield, what you want to dig a hole?
Right.
How does this have regional implications?
That's a good question. See, that's just a pretext to get the nose under the tent. There is no regional impact. And I think when we see at the end of the day, we look at the criteria in the minor site plan review, there is no regional impact. But going back to the fireworks, the bottom line here is what you have. Just to summarize and provide context, you have maybe a group of 20 or 30 citizens within the town of Londonderry that incessantly whine. So first you have that. They come from places unknown. I mean, we saw that in the statement. The guy said, we moved to this community for quiet, and we got to be faced with this, So, you have that. And then you have...
Wait. They moved within listening distance of a gun range for quiet.
That would be like that would be like the massholes who bought cheap property near the Pilgrim reactor and then complained about evacuation routes.
Right. So, to make a long story short, you have those folks. I call them the whiner contingent. Okay. And then you have the town government, the town council. You have people on the town council that are thin-skinned. They have paper-thin sensibilities. Okay. John Farrell is a nice guy, but he is thin-skinned. I mean, he gets excited. He's excitable when one person complains. A whole drama session unfolds and unrolls. So, I had made the comment, and somebody said, I found your comment capricious. And I says, oh, what comment was that? Where you said, well, they keep banging this drum. What are they going to do when they run out of steam on this one? What's going to be the issue du jour then? Because, I mean, they just kept going at it. So it's a perfect storm, for knee-jerk legislation. You have 20 or 30 whiners. You have, a bunch of the sky is falling town councilors. So that's really where this is. I don't want this to be blown out. You have April Gilmet from the Union Leader. Okay, I thought we had a pretty decent relationship with her. I mean, she was always fair with us for the most part. But, I saw that story she wrote in the Union Leader about, and never bothered to, call us and ask us for a comment. I'm disappointed by that. And, but you will notice there's one thing you look at when you look at all the press that this has gotten is how many comments or lack thereof there really are. People don't care about this. They really don't care. You have, one person maybe says something negative about it, but the other 5 comments are all like, oh, there goes freedom, and let's kick it to the curb. And so, I mean, in the larger context, it's much ado about nothing. And I told the guys, I said, let's be careful not to blow it up. Yeah, we're not going to get a fair shake in the media. We're not going to get a fair shake with Londonderry Patch or the Londonderry Times or Nutfield Publishing. None of them are going to give us a fair shake, nor the Hudson Litchfield News.
Yeah. I have to say right now is that listening to you where you say, well, heck with it, we're going to go forward. I know the law's on my side. The RSAs are there. We're going to go forward, and we're going to get this approved. And if they don't, we're going to
sue them.
And that's fine.
We accept that reality if it comes across our doorstep. I'm hoping, ultimately, we put our project in, it gets approved, because we've met complete muster. I understand to do this particular, and I'm not really disclose what it is, but we have to go to the Department of Environmental Services for an alteration of terrain permit. We have to go for a wetlands crossing permit, and I don't think people really understand the magnitude of what's involved. We're writing a check for $6,000 on top of the $14,000 check we already wrote for the engineering and surveying, okay? But the other $6,000 is for 12 pages of scale drawings, engineered scale drawings showing where the wetlands are going to be crossed, how they're going to be crossed, what we're using for drainage, what we're using for siltation containment, for erosion control. All that's got to be on there.
And whatever happened to the notion of it being your property and at some point the club acquired it?
Well, I think the club's had the property for a long time.
We have, over 40-plus years.
Yeah, and just think about that. That's $20,000 that you've spent before you even dig a hole.
And then we got to pay $2,000 to $4,000 to the town for the site plan fee review.
And that's all money spent, and you still don't have 100% certainty that that's money that you actually will have said, okay, we spent it, and now we can move forward. Somebody at some point can say, we spent this $20,000, and that's it. We're done, and we didn't get accomplished what we want. And there's the problem with a lot of government today, that it takes you time, resources, expertise, and it can all go for naught. And again, I keep going back, and maybe I'm super optimistic, or people keep telling me I live in a land that's gone far beyond that. But it's your land, it's your property. Yes, you're trying to do the right thing. But if DES gets a hair across, they can shut you down, and there's not a thing you can do about it unless you're willing to spend lots and lots more money.
I have to tell you, though, DES, for the bane that people have for them, they have been very, very fair to the Londonderry Fish and Game Club. Extremely fair.
Yeah, well, and I say that because I keep hearing of a lot of projects where they just say, no, or you can, but you have to do this, and this, and this, and all the time the meter's running with the dollar signs going up and up and up.
It's called an illegal taking. The Constitution used to protect against it, and what we need is a solid affirmation in the State House that such things should not be done. You own the property, you can do what the hell you want on it.
Well, it goes to the point of, yes, we have to protect the natural habitats. We have to be environmentally not sensitive, but at least aware. But at what point do we say you've gone too far? And I think that I'm coming from Lake Winnipesaukee, and a lot of landowners who are who have shoreland property go, I can't get anything done. To do a few little things is going to cost more than my house to.
You can't even trim a tree. Shoreland Protection Act. You can't even go out and remove brush from your property if you're on shoreland without having DES come down and having somebody look at it and make sure that what you do does not damage the shoreland. And it doesn't take much. It's like if one of those 20 to 30 whiners somewhere in this process comes along and becomes Mr. Enviro Activist or Miss or Ms. Enviro Activist, you could throw a 6 months, 12-month delay into this project just because they came over and cried about something that's already been covered by the $20,000 that he just spent.
If they prevent you from using some portion of your property, it's a taking. And as for the brush in the trees, well, the limb just broke, didn't it? Or that brush just caught fire. Sorry, I put it out when I'd lost enough of it.
Oh, they'll fine you. They will.
They will. Yep. I mean, that unfortunately, that's not going to work.
I mean, this is part of that 2007 to 2010 Democrat majority all across the entire legislature, and they passed the view tax, they passed the Shoreline Protection Act, they passed all that other garbage, and we did a halfway decent job getting rid of some of it in the previous 2 years to this session, but there's still tons of that garbage in there.
Yeah, the one thing is what you have to bear in mind, and we talk about this with other leaders of sporting clubs that have ranges, is You're living in a glass bubble. Everything you do is subject to the town review, and all they need is some stupid pretext to shut you down. They can't shut you down for nuisance, for noise, for using ranges. The law is ironclad. It protects us from being shut down. But take a look at Lone Pine. They didn't shut that club down because of shooting noise or nuisance. They shut it down because of zoning issues that were unresolved or perceived to be unresolved. Okay?
Ex post facto? In other words, they changed the zoning?
Exactly. Well, no, I don't know if they changed the zoning, but the holding there was it was never really understood whether or not it was, if they had gotten a variance or if it was, the town fathers in the 1960s had approved it to be what it is today. So instead of that being a question for our club, okay, and now here's the great thing, right? We have an actual black and white letter from the town from several years ago that states, right in black and white with a town signature, ranges are a permitted use in this zoning area. So,
that's wonderful.
Goodbye variance,
That's wonderful, and I hope you've got a copy off-site in a fireproof safe.
We do. We have a copy. That's the other thing I tell fish and game clubs. Go to the town, get your entire file, copy it, store it somewhere else, because it's amazing how things conveniently go missing.
Okay. We've kind of gone a little bit afield from the original topic of the
right.
fireworks.
Fireworks, yeah.
So the question I have now is, are we going to be able to see another demonstration like we did this last time? Or is the town going to go politically correct on you and say, no, it has to go somewhere else?
Here's what I think is going to happen, okay? I think the town is going to try and host their Old Home Days fireworks, okay? I also think the town is going to have a very difficult time finding a local shooter.
Well, I know that. Jesus, works both ways, doesn't it?
Because, okay, they poked us with a sharp stick over it, but in essence, they were poking the NHPA with a sharp stick, okay?
Who are the folks who actually put these on?
So, it depends on how much money you want to pay if you want to go to New York or, someplace else to get a shooter to come to New Hampshire and shoot 20 minutes worth of fireworks. Even that's a cost. That's not cheap. $10,000, $15,000, $20,000 for a show like that. Okay. So, the more they labor this, the more they tweak. We don't care anymore. We're past it. Okay. They can ruminate all they want over it. We're doing what we do. We did a nice thing for somebody else. The difference is we didn't get out there in the public arena and throw them under the bus. We didn't say, hey, don't blame us, love us, hate them. They just had it at our facility. We didn't do that. Okay. We could have done that. We probably could have saved ourselves a lot of ill will by doing that, but that's not who we are. We're loyal to our people. And as for the fireworks shooters, so that's the first thing. They may have some difficulty finding a shooter. The second thing is I'm not hearing any will that, they can pass very restrictive, arbitrary fireworks ordinance, or they can try, but when it comes up for public comment, they're going to get a lot of resistance. This I already know. Okay.
Why not offer to host their Old Home Day firework display for them?
Because we don't want the Arts and Croissants Club crowd on our club property. That's the first thing. I don't want sniveling whiners in my club. It's not what we're all about. No whiners. We have a sign up that says no whiners. And we enforce that. So that's one component right there. Is besides they got to go to Litchfield to get to us anyway, and the whiners wouldn't like that. Everything's got to be, all about them. So, there's the first. The second thing is when they try to pass this local legislation to ban all fireworks shows except for the town's Old Home Days, it'll probably fail. Okay, but what they will do on the backside is more than likely impose cost prohibitive fees if they can't get it done that way. Because there's, with towns, there's more than one way to skin the cat when you're in our fiefdom. So
did you say thiefdom?
Thiefdom, yes.
Thiefdom, yes.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Yeah, you see a lot of this. We had a town, CNHT carried a case for a couple of years, and I can't remember the name of the town, but they had this friends and family deal where certain people weren't getting taxed the same
Mhm.
at
Oh,
all.
yes.
Yeah.
And this went on for years and years and years. And and the DRA, of course, was on the hook because they never, for 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 years, never even followed up really to find out what the deal was. And, they had the intimidation of the people who were pointing fingers at the town. And in, like you said, documents. The state police came down and took everything out of the town hall, and stuff was missing. Of course, some stuff never existed. Okay, that was part of the problem. But those of you who are listening who don't live in, like, a small town government type town, you have to understand that they really are all somewhere corrupt. Somebody somewhere is doing something
They shouldn't be
doing.
Yeah.
There is embezzlement. There is manipulation. There is the friends and family plan. There are people who are being treated differently, which is like what Skip said, why home rule would be bad. Because there really is. When somebody gets caught embezzling, whatever they got caught, you can multiply that by 3 or 5 or 10, and you might find out what the real sum is, but the state doesn't want to know. They have no interest in knowing. They're going to hide it. So you're not going to get a lot of help. So the fact that he has a good relationship with the local environmental nutso crazy jobs at DES is a good thing. Because, some of those people are great folks, but there's a lot of regulation there, and it's crazy. So, but you're not always going to get up the ladder and get help. Because the state-level agency is responsible for the nonsense that goes on at the town level because they have oversight.
I think it's important to clarify what we did here with this particular project. Okay,
You got about 30 seconds.
We hired an engineer. When he went in the door, he already knew, this isn't his first dance going with DES. So by the time he got through the door, we had already had a bunch of waivers lined up, and the project just made quick work. So.
All right. Our next guest isn't here yet. My microphone's in the wrong place. There we go. Thing keeps moving. I don't know how it happens. This is Grog Talk. I am Steve. We have Skip, Mike, Rick. Marmar's in the corner, supervising us to keep us in line because we need somebody to do that for us. And we'll be right back, hopefully with Andrew Hemingway, in the next half hour. Welcome back. I like to listen to the music sometimes as I turn microphones up.
Riff.
This is Limbaugh-esque. Great bumper music.
I want a rock organ.
I went looking, and I haven't found one yet. I heard you. I'm still
A rock organ?
He wants a rock organ anthem for a bumper, and I have to go find one that we can use that's royalty-free.
Look up Emerson. Is it Keith Emerson?
Yeah, but is it royalty-free?
Yeah, that's the problem with a lot of music, that there is a fair use, but sometimes you do have to pay to be able to use it.
And there's a lot of regulations. Some fair use is good for broadcast, but you can't use it online on a podcast. Some you can use on a podcast. Some you can use in a YouTube video. Some you can't. There's a lot of different weird, and every single site that provides free music has a different set of configurations that you need to follow. And you want to be aware of what those are because maybe you need to pay a license, but maybe it's only $20. You don't want to have them come at you and go, you're using our music.
Yeah, got it. Okay.
Yeah. And I actually had a YouTube strip of the music, Riders of the Storm. It was a perfect, this is political theater, as long as we're talking about DES and all that other stuff. This went back to a few years ago when the town of
That's
Guilford...
1960s.
Well, not quite that far back.
He wasn't playing it then.
2005, 2006. There was a big farm area that was given to the local school board so that they could develop it for, at that time, a new high school. Well, the farm was given to them because it was deemed to be too wetlandy, and DES would not allow them to put a couple of feet of good topsoil on top of it because they wanted a sheep farm. Well, the ground was so wet so often it was rotting out the hoofs of the lambs and the sheep. So they decided, we're getting up in age anyways, here, just take it. So the school board said, well, we got to do something with this. And just a short time later, somebody who used to be an engineer at DES all of a sudden decided to retire and go out on their own and declared on his own, oh, there's not much wetlands here anyways. So this was back in a few years ago when we had 2 once-in-a-100-year storms right after each other. And it was pouring to beat the band. And, Doug Lambert and I caught wind of this, and we got a phone call from somebody else in town said, hey, the field is flooded. So we quickly strapped my son's seagoing kayak to the top of the Suburban, drove down, put him out there, and, we're making comments that, here's the school board saying this is not wetlands. This is not a problem for flooding, yada, yada, yada. And he's just kayaking over this entire 10-acre field. He's taking his paddle and jamming it down. And, he's got like a 7-foot paddle and he can't touch bottom. So it immediately put an entire stop. But the Riders of the Storm by the Doors was the music we had set to the YouTube. And they came and they stripped it as a copyright to bring it back.
YouTube has actually gotten real. I mean, if you put music in there that is even remotely suspect, they won't even let you post it anymore, which I think is good.
Yes.
I mean, they've protected themselves in that way. If you use music that's not royalty free, and YouTube can tell just by the sound of the music embedded in your video, they won't let you post it till you fix it. They'll say, we think this might be, go. I mean, if you go get a license, that's fine. You can go do that. But, I kudos to them, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, it's good that they do the copyright because I have forced a couple of my videos to be taken down from other people's site because they didn't ask for copyright, and frankly, they were using it in a way that was counter to being conservative. So they were twisting it, sort of like what Carol Shea Porter did when she stole some of my video.
Oh, for her TV commercial.
For her TV commercial, and WMUR didn't do it. Darn thing. I should put that up too.
Still, because we haven't talked about WMUR in weeks, and we were bringing them up left and right.
You mean the station that dare not speak its name?
Yeah, the one that didn't want me to use their logo.
Right, and you still do, and they haven't done a damn thing, have they?
No, they haven't, because I asked them, that, in their complaint they said, you cannot use us to promote yourself, remove it from your website, and all of your handbills. And I went, okay, I'm willing to do that, but I'm a simple person to the point of being called a simpleton by most of my critics. Please send me a copy of one of those handbills or flyers that you pointed out in your letter, and I'd be most happy to comply. I'm still waiting.
Chirp, chirp.
Yep.
Chirp, chirp.
But anyway, speaking of chirping...
Time to rerun the little Photoshop.
Chirp, chirp.
Yeah, speaking of chirping, we're missing somebody.
Yeah.
And we're going to do the regular Grok Talk thing, aren't we?
Yeah, we are. This is the rule, and maybe I didn't tell Andrew. Here's the thing. He emailed me last night, and I didn't have wireless, and I didn't see it this morning, and asked me if he could phone in. And we haven't set that up yet, so my answer this morning was no. Pretty much, no. My answer was no. You need to drive here. And I didn't see an email from him in response, so maybe he had a similar circumstance and he was unable to comply. He may show up. That's great if he doesn't. But our rule is that if we book you and you don't come, we talk about you anyway. So, but we can say a lot of great things about Andrew.
We can. He was certainly the chairman. One of the chairman who really put the RLCNH, Republican Liberty Caucus here in New Hampshire, on the map by trying to push for folks who really stuck to the party platform, really wanted to put the values of the constitutions, both of them, the New Hampshire and the U.S., into place, and actually more than just lip service, people who would actually vote and act in accordance with those things. And then Carolyn McKinney took over when he decided to go off and do some other things and really push that as well. So he does that. He has become, he did work for Newt Gingrich for a while, helped him with the digital backside of that campaign, did a pretty good job from what I understand.
I thought New Hampshire was a most excellent organization.
Yes, and he's continuing to be active. He's got a couple of projects that are ongoing that we know about. We're not quite sure that we can publicly talk about them right now, which is kind of one reason we were hoping he was going to show up.
He can't be here. He thought he would be free, but he's got a family thing, and he could do a phoner, but we can't do a phoner, so.
Well, that means another piece of hardware I have to schlep in here. And we do have to talk to the folks who kindly let us borrow this office space, the Coalition of New Hampshire Taxpayers, otherwise known as CNHT, so we can get some phone lines in here. We could actually have 5 lines going.
We could do a lot of stuff.
Yeah, in fact, if we bought a bigger board, we could actually do the whole show, and you could, either I or you could control the board from home over on an iPad.
Feel free to click that donate button, ladies and gentlemen, so we can get a new board.
In here, because eventually, by the way, folks, we do want to do this live. We do want to start live streaming the show, so that not only will we do the podcast on Grok Talk as well as on AC Nation, who have picked us up for syndication, to which we give thanks once again.
And they did say that we could live stream.
Oh, well, that's even better. Well, and at some point after just doing the live audio streaming, because there's the laptop over there that will do that, just sitting there all by its lonesome next to the donuts, we can start going back to doing the video streaming, as long as I don't go completely crazy again. Step by step, we'll get back to that point. But
well, the whole point of this is to make it as easy as possible, and we've gotten it to the point where post-production takes about an hour.
Yep.
And that's it, and then posting it. And it doesn't get much better than that. And it's the production quality, I think, is pretty decent.
Yes.
Considering that the software I'm using to run through the soundboard is free, and the equipment we have is pretty much equipment we had, and we've added some things.
Yep.
Thank you very much for those of you who've contributed. We are in the process of adding more headset mics so that we can get rid of that background sound that you hear, and the echoey noise that makes people push into their mics because they're picking that up, and it's affecting their ability to hear themselves, so they get closer. And really, what all that really does is it just peaks the meter in post-production, which is fine. I can remove some of that. But as we proceed with equipment, thanks to our generous donors and people who are involved with GraniteRock.com, we'll get more headset mics, which will resolve this microphone issue, and then we'll pull these mics out and use them on field trips.
Yep.
And eventually we will go to a bigger board, and we may go to more mics. And at this point, we've been able to keep the room pretty full.
Oh,
week after
or
week,
overfull.
or overfull, week after week. Thank God there's an air conditioner in the other room that's been on for a couple hours now.
Yep.
So we're really trying to bring you, the listener, the best quality show that we can without going over the top or anything.
Yes, because remember, folks, we are not at a regular radio station. We are not renting time. We are not running a show right now. We don't have the commercial quality, high-end Rush Limbaugh type setups that you might see in some other place. This is a production of GraniteRock.com. This is the bloggers you read. Our bloggers are now talking. And that's really what we want to try to accomplish. We'll talk about any topic of the day. And we got to talk about Andrew some more.
Yeah, there's no gold-plated EIB microphones here, but they work well. That's all we need.
Yeah. So, anyways, I will open it up, guys. We've got the scandals going on. We've got New Hampshire politics going on. We might as well fill in. We got 20 minutes to talk about it. And I have no problem at all believing that we can fill those 20 minutes and go off on 6 or 7 different major topics. So raise your hand if you want to talk. Who wants to go first? Rick.
On the scandals, just a thought here. There's a phrase that I've not heard used very often in the midst of all these scandals going on, and that is constitutional crisis. I mean, think about it. We're having a constitutional crisis in D.C. When you look at Fast and Furious and the IRS and all these other scams, Benghazi, we're in the midst of a constitutional crisis. We clearly have a president who flagrantly disregards and tramples on the Constitution.
Oh, yeah. Well, I put up a post about that. A lot of people are writing about that over and over again. And unfortunately, we voted the same ship of fools back in that started this back in, actually before 2008.
I'm wondering, well, first of all, I think we've had a constitutional crisis since Nancy Pelosi took the gavel back in 2006, 7, was it?
January 2007 for 2006 elections, yeah.
I don't think I've had a race since then. And I know we talk about it a lot, and I think the idea of a constitutional crisis does come up in different ways. I think, tying back to what JR was talking about, is that the best way to sell this to the people who we've named the low-information voters?
I would say no, because most people nowadays, and again, it goes back to why JR was here, was our educational system, is that how much time is really spent other than Liberty Harbor. See, I got it right. I can learn these things.
You'll get it wrong next week.
Thank you. Who actually, made a determined effort to study the classic documents, the Western Classic Liberalism Foundation documents, and we just you don't see that in the high schools anymore. You don't see that being taught, or as a you don't even see our civics being taught anymore. It's just one of those deals. And when the foundation isn't there, saying it's a constitutional crisis kind of says, well, yeah, we who have studied it later in life understand what's going on, but the low information voter?
We've got a problem with our moss-covered three-handled family credenza. They don't... And I think it is important that, our, engineers, even, he's not an engineer, but you took law, you have a degree. I had some college, I've read a lot, I've become a much, much smarter person since I moved to New England. And you really do. I used to be one of those, I talk about it all the time, I used to be one of those independents, those people who stayed away from politics because I didn't know enough, and all I would do is embarrass myself. And a lot of people are like that.
But I am a scientist.
He's
a social scientist.
You're a social scientist.
Yes, I am.
And it's true, because is BA?
Bachelor of Arts, yeah.
In social science, yes.
Which no doubt helps understanding the madness of crowds.
One of my favorite publications is Freakonomics 1 and 2.
And they're slightly liberal in their outlook.
Yeah, but you got to look at the underlying thesis. They're talking about how people respond to incentives. Mm-hmm. And what the negative externalities. I'm sure you've seen those terms used in a few of my posts.
Right.
And that's just it. It really does key on that. We all use humor for the most part. We get a little snarky, you try to get people engaged in the subject matter because some of it's kind of dry. If you make it interesting, people will read it and maybe they'll pick up the point. And then, of course, still, once again, if you're too technical, you start to use the word like Constitution, you send up red flags at the IRS. Well, now, like you just said, you send up red flags everywhere. Sure. People are like, Constitution? I don't even know what's in the Constitution. I don't want to talk about that.
I got a technical question for you. Why do you keep holding onto your mic like that
because,
on the headset?
I get better. I can't turn it up anymore. I'll start peeking.
Why don't you just
twist it? Haven't you watched me do that? I've done it like 10 times.
Oh, okay.
So now I just put my finger on it and push it all closer to my mouth.
Yeah, it's like a nervous tick. The microphone won't behave, so Steve's got to keep it under check.
I do, yes. That's right here.
Anyways,
apparently, if you get a new headset, get one with a slightly longer microphone like that.
No boom.
We'll try that for a while.
All
the other problem is that this is on the missing tooth side, so that's where the lispy noise comes out. I should switch it and see what happens.
No, you can. Yeah, it'll flip. So, anyways, Mike.
Yeah, I got a trailer for a couple of items going on. So, first of all, since Andrew Hemingway's not here, I will have to talk about him. We're hosting him down at our place next week, most likely Thursday the 13th, might be the Tuesday. And he's going to come and talk to folks in the Hollis and Nashua area about his new projects to get more conservatives elected. He's got new databases, better social media, and he's looking to put funding together, which is the other reason why he wants to talk to some people. And I'm hoping to get a more complete and more crisp definition of his organization that he's putting together. But basically, it's dirty work and somebody has to do it, and I don't think the state GOP is.
Well, I was going to say, on that whole idea, if he's doing data acquisition, database comparison, some deep data mining, that's the stuff that the NHGOP should be doing. And I asked the chair, Jennifer Horn, whether she was going to do that or her new website. And I told her right off the bat, at a meeting of the Belknap County Republicans, you need to be, you may not have all the money to start or even to start, certainly not to finish this, but it's got to get started. And she looked at me and said, well, wouldn't we need a new website better? Isn't that more important to better communicate? And I said, no, you need this data mining. So, Andrew's doing the job that the NHGOP isn't or refuses to do.
He's acquired a database that's better than the Voter Vault from a good source. I'll let him describe that to people when he's on the air. He's doing the social media, and he's looking to get in touch with more database engineers and more data mining people. I'm hoping to help him with that. And look what we have here. I mean, you get a bunch of software and database engineers right here at Granite Crock.
His company name is Digital Acumen.
Yes.
Digital dash acumen.
That's his.
There is a digital acumen that has no dash, so you have to.
That's his company. But what we're talking about is what he's doing on the side to elect more conservatives. Because that's what we have to do. We have to push the electoral window to the right. We have to move the Overton window of discussion to the right because we're losing. The Liberals are inching it their way, and we have to push the other way.
Primaries.
Well, that and we talked about how much does the Constitution really mean to the average low information voter, and that's not to say low intelligence voter. Low information is just they're living on. Watch Jay Leno's jaywalking.
Right.
I mean, a perfect example of that, where they're living their lives. They don't have a clue as to what government and progressives are slowly squeezing the box in which they live. I mean, that's another. Instead of saying boiling the frog, we ought to start saying.
Which, by the way, I've been led to understand is totally untrue. If you put a frog in a pot of boiling water, the minute it starts to get warm, it'll jump out.
Yes, but I think the better analogy is we're free to live our lives, but only within the box that progressive government is allowing us to do. We can choose any health care plan that we want as long as they approve it. As long as it's approved.
It's got to be in the box.
It's back into that Hegelian frame of reference.
Well, and I think we want to make the point that the box is shrinking in more ways than one. If they had their way, we won't be living in nice houses in quiet areas with lots of ground around us. We'll be living in little boxes that'll be smaller and smaller as the regulations get tighter and tighter in apartments, in suburbs, and finally in burbs.
Driving our smart cars if we're allowed, instead of a bike.
Well, that's what the Sustainable Communities Initiative is all about, is to urbanize the rural areas. And if you look at, there's a new fad going on in New York City and San Francisco called the micro apartments, where they're all agog about these brand new transformable apartments that are ranging anywhere from 200 to 300 square feet each.
Oh, like those micro houses too.
The tiny houses.
Yeah.
Which is
I can live just fine in this thing that's the size of a closet.
I mean, to tell you the truth, and I do need to bring in a camera, but I'm looking at the size of this room, and that's not much bigger. I mean, for a whole family, this is not a big deal. For a one person, maybe not so bad of a deal, but I certainly I don't want to repeat my college dorm experience again.
If you ever rented an efficiency room that had a kitchen in it, if you put up a couple walls in the kitchen section, that's about how big it would be.
Yeah, I know. To cook an egg, you got to open the closet door.
Exactly. I mean, if it's a trailer, if it's a little vacation lodge somewhere, or a hut on the beach, that's fun. You live in it for 20 years? I don't think so.
Yeah. Now there was a few years ago, there was this movement to proclaim that cities were the creative space, that cities wanted to do all that they could to bring in the creative class. People who didn't succeed by dint of their work, as plumbers or electricians, the blue-collar workers, but those people who actually thought of new things and created new stuff, and generally at a higher wage, and they wanted to bring those people in. And then they kind of found out that, some of that creative stuff doesn't pay as well as what they thought. So that's where this micro apartment stuff is starting to come in. And now once again, names fail me, but the guy who was behind this, I think his last name is Florida, is kind of admitting after 10 years, maybe I wasn't so right after all about this stuff.
The thing that makes cities creative spaces is the free market. Places like New York and London and Paris didn't become major hubs because government said so. They became major hubs because of the activity that naturally concentrated there. Once government started to mess with what you could and couldn't do in cities, they became less creative and eventually became hellholes.
Detroit.
Yep, there you go. Detroit, good example.
In fact, right at the top post right now at Instapundit is corrupt one-party machine government. Detroit heads to the pawn shop, and this is not just hardcore pawn on one of the cable channels. They're about to sell off a lot of the holdings in the Detroit Institute of Arts, which is rumored to be billions of dollars, including a Van Gogh and some other high, Bruegel, Rodin.
So their progressive crack habit has required them to sell the furniture? Is that what you're telling me?
They got to pay the electric bill.
Yeah.
Well, they're already not doing that. Most of the streetlights are off. Help the crime,
Yeah, unfortunately, the city is already struggling to keep the lights on. Is one sentence actually in there? Yeah. And really, it's almost become a wasteland. And they cannot say anything other than, they won't bring themselves. You see, the Democrats have been in control for decades there.
The unions, yeah.
The unions. You look at the corruption. I mean, it almost makes Illinois look like a clean government site.
Yeah, and they're getting all uppity because the state has to manage them.
They should import Marion Barry.
Well, see, they've got a half Republican governor, and when it finally got so bad they had to ask for help, they really couldn't make up their mind whether they should ask for help for a start. They fought amongst themselves. Finally, it got so bad that, as you say, they couldn't keep the lights on. I think even in City Hall, they called in the help. The state sent it, but said, "But we're going to run things if you want our money."
Yeah, and always the prism is through racism, so that even though the emergency manager is black, the whole city council, which is very much a majority black environment, most of those who push the levers of government are black. Because it was a white governor putting in a black emergency manager, they called it racism. And I'm going, no, guys, this is not racism. This is money you guys corruptly spent when you couldn't afford it.
Well, your point...
racism would be sending in a white manager and a bunch of Boers from South Africa to take the place over.
I mean, it wasn't racist that the unions and the Democrats and a lot of black leaders in the city of Detroit over decades and decades raped that city and totally destroyed it. I mean, what is his name? Kwame or whatever what's his
Kwame
face?
Kilpatrick.
Him. Yeah. I mean, he's a third world dictator.
Yeah, you remember my blog entry on America's mayors?
Yeah, running Detroit into the ground. And it's like, it wasn't racist of him to ruin the lives of thousands and thousands of black Americans?
Yeah. Well,
like I said, they need to import Marion Barry because he's got such an optimistic outlook, you know.
At least everybody will know where to get their cocaine.
Yeah, like he said in Washington, D.C., aside from all the killings, we're relatively crime-free. You know, I mean, he gets there and somebody says, what about the criminal enterprise? He says, some enterprise isn't better than no enterprise, you know.
And at least you know whose crack habit you're feeding.
Exactly.
Right. Oh, man. Yeah, and I will say this is that, you know, and it bears saying, politicians since Obama took office have always decried the capitalists, the heads of the commerce engine here in the United States as greedy capitalists. I just point out, and talking about Detroit really puts a cap on it. Politicians are greedy too. They may not always be greedy for money, although oftentimes you know, like what's his name down in New Orleans with the cold cash guy, the Louisiana
Congressman William Jefferson.
Yes, $92,000 in his deep cold freezer, literally cold cash.
Not mine.
Yeah, not mine.
Wrapped in tinfoil that he maybe should have been better off using for a hat.
Yes, but you know, you do get those bribery type schemes, but for the most part, politicians generally don't like hearing that. Well, their coin of corruption is not necessarily money; it's power, and the power to do things for people, and also, as we're seeing now with the scandals, doing things to people, and that, to me, is the biggest indictment of big government because they can get away with it. And as we're seeing with Obama, who has set the stage, and I can no longer believe I can come up with a better example of the fish rots from the head down, where he has been saying all these things about the right wing, the Tea Partiers, the Republicans, on every single campaign stop that he's been on since 2006, that the underlying bureaucracy underneath him hasn't caught the message. And now we see the IRS. You know, we talk about the military as being the force of the United States. Well, that's been outside of our borders. The real muscle in the United States is the IRS. And we look at this and go, this should be the this should be the beginning of the end of big government if we can, because when you see the government is bullying individual citizens just because they have a different philosophical outlook, that is tyranny.
So first of all, let's call it a dog whistle, because Obama was sending signals to his hierarchy throughout his first term and especially around the election. Secondly, I was listening to Stein this week, and he specifically said he'd interviewed some people on the inside, and they said that the IRS saw itself as, wait for this, a law enforcement agency. Hey, what? They're supposed to be just accountants.
Well, we've seen and talked about this on our blog post as well as on Grok Talk earlier, that every single department seems to have its own guns and bullets division. And yes, indeed, I'll leave this hanging out there because we have, 45 seconds left, 30 seconds. I'll leave you with this thought. Are we actually turning into a police state based on what we've been seeing lately. And gosh, folks, there's the EPA scandal that's been brewing under the surface too, and that's going to be coming out. So we'll see what happens.
Obviously, the bureaucrats think that when protection matters, the police are only minutes away.
Oh, maybe there's just a bureaucrat a few minutes away, right?
Maybe.
Help! IRS! No. Help! Department of Energy! No, that doesn't work. Help! Department of Education!
That didn't work.
No. Maybe that's why I'm armed. Right now. And we are Grok Talk. This is Grant at Grok.com. Thank you very much for spending 2 hours with us. If you did, or 30 minutes, if you spent 30 minutes, whatever you did, it's great. Take an opportunity to visit cnht.org, grant@grok.com, make a donation, and help us keep this program running. Thank you very much, and we'll see you next week.
Because we pay to keep the lights on.
That's right.
Some of the content on this program is shared under the fair use provision of U.S. copyright law, found free in the public domain, or covered under Attribution 3.0. Some of the music on this program is provided by Kevin MacLeod at Incompetech.com.